In chapter 16, we're going to talk about adjectives and adverbs, and primarily really about adjectives, right? We all know what adjectives are in English. Words like tall or angry or brown or short, right? These are adjectives. And Greek has lots of adjectives too, and we need to be able to read them so that we can read the Bible. But how are Greek adjectives different from English adjectives? Well, there's one main way. Greek adjectives have case, number, and gender, just like Greek nouns. Greek adjectives have case, number, and gender, and they match the nouns they modify, case, number, and gender. That's the big concept, right? That's the big concept with adjectives, is they have a case, number, and gender. So, for example, they're nominative, genitive, dative, or accusative. They're singular or plural. They're masculine, feminine, or neuter. And that is determined by the noun that they're modifying. Now, there's some really good news when it comes to adjectives. As I throw up the chart of the adjective, you're like, how is this good news? Well, let's orient ourselves again. Right, here's the singular forms, right? And here are the plural forms. We have singular and plural forms. These things are familiar to us, right? Singular and plural. We also have here, you'll notice we have the nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. All that's normal. And this is for the word meaning good, right? Agathos. Agathos means good. It's an adjective meaning good. So then as we pause and we step back, what was initially overwhelming to us, we look and we're like, oh, wait. Os, u, o, on, oi, on, ois, us. That's completely regular. Those are exactly the same endings as logos. Yes, they are. A, ace, a, ain, I, own, ice, os. Wait, those are exactly the same endings as phone. Yes, they are. On, u, o, on, a, own, ois, a. Those are exactly the same endings as teknon. Yes, they are. This is very good news that most adjectives in Greek, not all, but most adjectives in Greek are completely regular, using first and second declension endings. Now, if you watched our video on the vocabulary of the last chapter, you know that a few adjectives, the last letter of their stem will be a rho, iota, or epsilon, and so they'll follow the alpha endings in the feminine singular. So, for example, for hagios, feminine forms would be hagia, hagios, hagia, hagion, right? That would be the only difference in this entire chart for the adjective hagios. And again, you're just reading Greek. You're not composing it usually. So this is not going to be difficult for you to recognize. It's not going to be difficult. You're not going to be like, I don't know what that is. You're going to recognize that as a dative singular feminine ending. It's going to be modifying almost certainly a dative feminine singular noun right next to it. So that also helps. Let's talk about the way that adjectives are used. Three different uses. We're going to talk about the attributive, the predicative, and the substantive use of the adjective. First, the attributive use. This is the use of the adjective that most people think of. If we just say something like the good man, right? That's what we think of with an adjective. We have a noun, we have a little word there that tells us about the noun that's right in front of it. So, and this happens frequently in Greek. We could have the good man. We could have agathos, agathos anthropos, right? Agathos anthropos. And let me write that a little bit more clearly. Agathos anthropos. And you can see here is our noun that I'm highlighting in green, and it's modifying an explicit noun that I'm highlighting in yellow. You'll notice that when this happens, the adjective frequently will have the article, and the noun that it modifies may or may not. So this could occur a number of different ways. The same thing could be written out. It could be agathos anthropos. It could be anthropos agathos. That also would be translated the good man. Or it could be agathos anthropos. Okay, all of those, agathos anthropos, all of those are translated as the good man, the good man, the good man. Slightly different word order, but you'll notice in all of those cases, the adjective has the article in front of it, and the noun may or may not, depending on the placement of it. And also, the attributive adjective is almost certainly going to be, well, most of the time is going to be right next to the noun it modifies, right? It's going to be right next to it. It's usually going to have the article in front of it. Not always, right? If you want to say a good man, you're going to have agathos anthropos. That is a good man, right? So that will sometimes occur without the article. In such case, neither one will have the article in front of it, okay? So the attributive use, equivalent to the good man. And this doesn't just occur in the nominative, right? If we say to the good man, it would be to agatho anthropo, right? To the good man. So realize this can occur in all the different cases, but whenever it does, the adjective is going to match the noun that it modifies, case, number, and gender, right? Masculine dative singular, masculine dative singular. Not too bad, not too difficult. How about the predicative use? Okay, well, this is where there's a form of me in Greek that's either present or implied between the noun and the adjective. So the simple example would be the man is good, right? Ha anthropos estin agathos. Ha anthropos estin agathos. Here's our subject nominative, the man. Here's the to be verb, is. And here's what's called the predicate adjective, right? It's an adjective that predicates. It's not a predicate noun, it's a predicate adjective. It predicates or asserts or claims, that's what predicates means. It asserts or claims something about the subject of that to be verb, right? The man is good. It's a predicate adjective. It's a predicative use of the adjective. Do you see the difference? Good man, that's the attributive use. And then you would go on with the sentence. The good man sees the Lord of glory, ton kurion. You know, you would have the sentence continue on, right? The good man sees the Lord. This is the sentence. There's a period here. The man is good, right? There is a to be verb that is present in the sentence or implied, and the adjective is asserting something about the subject of the to be verb. The kind of strange thing about Greek is that to be verbs can be implied, and so it might not be there. You're like, well, how would I know? Well, you would have the modern critical editions help you here a little bit, but it would have a period. You'd be like, I need a verb. I don't see a verb. Then you need to supply one. Does the verb to be fit? Yes, that seems to fit. Well, then use it, right? So when that happens, when the to be verb is implied, a couple of things are going to help you. There's going to be a period, right, showing it's a complete sentence. The noun, there'll be an adjective, right? If it's the kind of construction we're talking about right now. There'll be a noun that matches it, case, number, and gender, right? Because the adjective is asserting something about this noun, so they match each other, case, number, and gender. And in this case, when the to be verb is implied, the noun that it's talking about will usually have the article, and the adjective will not. The adjective will not. So this might occur as ha anthropos agathos, period. Or it might occur as agathos ha anthropos, period. But notice, the sentence does not go on. It's not the good man sees the Lord. It's a complete sentence. So we have to supply some sort of verbal idea between those. You can't just say, the man good. We have to, the man is good. The man is good. And Greek will imply the to be verb like that. When it does, notice the subject nominative usually, almost always has the article, and the adjective, the predicate use of the adjective, will not have an article in front of it. That's different from the attributive, where we saw with consistency the attributive use of the adjective usually has the article in front of it, and the noun it's modifying may or may not. The substantive use, this is where the noun, where the adjective functions like a noun. We don't do this as much as Greek does it in English. We do it occasionally. We might say, the dead will rise again. The dead will rise. Well, technically, dead is an adjective, and by that we mean the dead people, right? We don't use the word people. We just say the dead are good will win out in the end, right? Good will win. We're using good as a noun. It's functioning like a noun in that sentence. Greek does this all over the place. all over the place. Like Greeks love, it's a very efficient way to speak. You don't have to have a noun if the adjective will function as a noun. And of course, because Greek you can stick case endings on. You can communicate this adjective is masculine, this adjective is feminine, this adjective is neuter. If I want to say the good woman sees the Lord, I could just say, hey, agathe, blepe, ton kurion, right? I don't have to have the word gune here, right? In fact, Greeks probably would not use it. They would just use a feminine form of the word agathos, implying this is a woman. So we'd have to provide the word woman in our translation. The good woman sees the Lord. Or, he gave it to agathe. He gave it to the good woman. Or he gave it tois agathois. He gave it to the good men, right? By that ending being masculine plural, we're then having to provide in English the word men or people or woman or thing or things to communicate what Greek can communicate with specific case endings and numbers. Hope that makes some sense to you there. Okay, so just reviewing adjectives. Most adjectives in Greek are going to be irregular, following first and second declension endings. The three main uses of the adjective are attributive, the good man, the predicative, the man is good, or substantive, good will win out in the end, right? The substantive is where the adjective is functioning like a noun. Now, I told you most adjectives are first and second declension, but there are a few that follow more of a third declension type ending. And in fact, we'll see in this pattern for pas upon, this is the word that means all, every, or whole. And if you don't know, just try one of those, and whichever one makes sense in English is probably right. But all, every, or whole. And you can see here, this word, this is an adjective that follows third declension in the masculine and third declension in the neuter, third declension in masculine, third declension in neuter, but follows first declension in the feminine. This is what we sometimes call as a 3-1-3 pattern, a 3-1-3, right? Third declension, masculine, third declension, neuter, first declension, feminine. That's one reason why we're memorizing pas, pasa, pon, pontas. So we can get that stem, pont. This is what we recommended in the vocabulary video for the last chapter. So you can get the stem pont that the word continues to build off of through the rest of the paradigm. Now, remember, just like with third declensions, plural dates lead to complexity, danger can lead to sin. The dative plural is always going to be a little bit strange. A letter will drop out, letters will combine, things like that. So expect what you've learned about third declensions to continue to be true for the dative plural. What am I recommending for this? I'm recommending that you memorize pas upon pontas. You understand, okay, that's 3-1-3. You see how that's going to continue to build on the pont stem. You see how the feminine is, those are cardia and phone endings. You'll be able to recognize those when you see those. So if I say, what is the Greek word for all, every, whole? You can just spit back at me without thinking, pas upon pontas, and then you're able, with that information, to be able to recognize these other forms when they occur. As we mentioned to you, if we put the cookies on the very, very, very bottom shelf, maybe even on the floor, you say, what does this mean? It means all, every, or whole, whichever one fits. A little bit more detail on that. In the predicate position, it frequently is translated all. What do we mean by predicate position? That the noun has the article and that the form of the adjective does not. So, pantes hoi anthropoi, all the men. Pasa he palace, all the city. Pantasoma, all the body. It may be helpful for you to note that word order frequently mirrors the English, right? The adjective, the article, the noun. The adjective, the article, the noun. And so that maybe that will help you to remember to render that all the body, all the body, all the city, all the city, all the men, right? Okay, in the attributive position, and that's where, remember, where the adjective has the article, the noun may or may not, it frequently means whole. Notice the qualifications here where we're saying something like frequently means, right? Because context is most important, right? The whole man, ha pas anthropos, he pasapalis, the whole city, ta pansoma, the whole body. Notice how, maybe this is too obvious to point out, but continue to note the base idea, the foundational idea that's so essential for you to know, that nouns match, that adjectives match the nouns that they modify, case, number, and gender. Adjectives match the nouns they modify, case, number, and gender. Adjectives match the noun they modify, case, number, and gender. A.E. Housman has a poem about this, actually. Not sure if I'm spelling his name correctly there, but the famous British poet A.E. Housman, who was also a linguist and a Latin scholar, has a poem about the way adjectives match their nouns in case, number, and gender. It's not often that you find such fine poetry about classical grammar, but A.E. Housman did it, right? So what if the word pos, right? This is the word all, every, or whole. What if that, or some form of it, has no article? Well, it frequently in that case means every. Pos anthropos, every man. Pasapalis, every city. Pansoma, every body. And what if it is used as a substantive with no expressed noun present in the sentence? It frequently means all there. Hoi pantes, all people, or all men. Hai pasai, all women. Ta panta, all things. Now this may be, I'll be honest with you, I'm thinking this may be a little more detail than you need. It's in the textbook, a little more detail than you need. You might at this point just need to know that pasapan, pantas means all, every, or whole. And really, whichever one of those fits in the context, go with that. In this chapter, we also introduce you to the idea of the degrees of the adjective. What do you mean? What do we mean by that? Maybe you didn't know this, but even the adjectives you use in English have a positive degree, a comparative degree, and a superlative degree, right? What do we mean by that? Well, the positive degree of the adjective would be small, the comparative smaller, the superlative smallest. Young, younger, youngest. Good, not good, good, or goodest, but good, better, best, which reminds us that even in English, we have some very common adjectives that have irregular forms, right? And Greek has the same thing. Greek also has some very common adjectives that have some irregular forms in the comparative and superlative. So we don't want to get mad at the Greeks when we have the same thing. Let's talk about some of the regular patterns first. So if you have a word like wise, sophos, right, that's the positive degree. The comparative would be sophoteros, and the superlative would be sophotatos, right? Now, as we look at those endings, those comparative endings, teros and tatos, we recognize that, look at that it could take masculine endings, feminine endings, neuter endings, in all the different cases, right? That ending right there it'd be like me saying, what is the ending of the word meaning good? Agathos, but you realize it could be agathos, agathe, agathon, it could be agathu, agathes, right? So we're just looking at the nominative singular form there. So wise, wiser, wisest. Maybe it would help you to see that in English, the comparative ending is that sound, which is very similar, right? It's the same as the right there, sophoteros. The ending here can also be, the superlative ending can also be an istos ending, istos, which if you look at est is similar to this ist type sound. So I'm trying to give you a few little memory things to hang on to there. And let me also say, just as a note, that in Greek, in the Koine period, the superlative ending, when it's used, it's kind of rare, is beginning to take on what sometimes is called an elative sense, which we might say is like very, very. In other words, it's not really like you're comparing multiple things. It just means very, very. So sophotatos might not mean, hey, this is the wisest of three or more people, but it might mean this person is sophotatos, very, very wise. Also, there's kind of this slippage going on in the Koine period where the comparative forms will sometimes in context seem to be functioning superlatively, or where positive forms are functioning comparatively. There's as the superlative is dropping out of usage or is meaning this elative idea, there seems to be a slippage between these other degrees of the adjective. And I should say one of the common ways of expressing who something is being compared to is to put it in the genitive. So if I have, for example, hasophoteros, I'm getting tongue-tied here, hasophoteros is the one who is wiser, right? That's using it as a substantive. And I want to say the one who is wiser than I would put a mu there. The one who is wiser than I. Or if I say the one who is wiser than you, the one who is wiser than you. So it's not like the word than is in there, it's just the genitive. Or if the one who is the wiser than he would be the genitive autu, right? It's frequently the thing that you're comparing to, you will put right next to the comparative form in the genitive. There are other ways of expressing comparison. Here is the word maidzone. There are some adjectives in Greek that do not form their degrees in this regular way that we have here with saphos. Oh, I didn't mean to mark that out. But the regular endings with teras and tatas, where you can see it's building just transparently on the root. There are a few irregular words, like the word megas means great, right, or large. Megas means great or large. The comparative of that is maidzone. You're like, how would I know that? The only way you know that is by memorizing it, right? Maidzone means greater or larger. And you can look at these endings. This is really just more for illustrative purposes, because we're not asking you to memorize this, but it's following third declension endings, right? So we said, like sit outside in armchair, especially waving sin aside, or sit outside in sun and wave sin aside, right? We're using those third declension endings, but as opposed to the sigma, we have nothing in the nominative and accusative. But the so this is a word that means greater or larger, and you just need to you at least need to memorize the initial form here, right? You need to memorize that. So what you're realizing at its root level is that most Greek adjectives will form their comparative very regularly, like saphoteros, wiser, right? Wiser. But there are some that are irregular that will use this own ending. You're like, I thought that was the genitive plural ending. Well, it is the genitive plural ending, but it can also be this comparative ending, right? So maidzone, and it's just irregular, and then it's following third declension type endings. So I'm sorry, but that's just the case. You just need to be aware. Hey, some adjectives in Greek are irregular and they don't follow the teras tatas endings, but their comparative forms are going to be following more of these endings, like maidzone. Maidzone means greater. Megas means greater, large, and I'm gonna read through the chapter and I'm gonna just see how that works. I'm not gonna stress too much about it, and primarily focus on recognizing these irregular forms. The last thing, you're going to like this. This is straightforward. This is it, right? Adverbs, right? An adverb is a little word that describes frequently a verb. It can also describe an adjective and an adverb, but frequently describes a verb, like I walk quickly, right? Quickly is an adverb. The common adverb ending in English is that ly, and it describes further what the verb often, right? So it's telling, how do I walk? Well, with what speed do I walk? I walk quickly. In Greek, the equivalent of the ly ending in English is os, right? So kalos means good, kalos means well, right? Or goodly, right? It means well. So that os ending, when you see that, you can think to yourself, I bet this is an adverb of some kind. So you need to read the chapter, think about it, study it, and then when you think you're ready, do the practice exercises at the end of the chapter to test yourself and see if you really have learned the material, and to drive home the material, and press for it, because we want to be able to read the inspired words of the apostles. So when they use adjectives and adverbs, we want to be able to read those.